Yuna sat in the back row of the Grand Xenobiology Auditorium and tried very hard not to float out of her seat. The gravity on Station Village 7 was only 0.3 g, which meant everything felt light and strange. She had been living here for 3 months now, and she still hated it. Her body wanted to jump when she walked. Her food floated off her plate if she wasn't careful. She missed the solid, heavy feeling of earth beneath her feet. Around her, 3,000 alien students filled the massive hall. There were Mechari with their insect-like bodies and clicking mandibles. There were Silthians, who looked like floating jellyfish made of blue light. There were species Yuna couldn't even name yet, with too many eyes or not enough limbs or skin that changed color with their moods. She was the only human. The first human to ever attend the Galactic Union Academy. It was supposed to be an honor. Mostly it just felt lonely. At the front of the auditorium, Professor Tilvan adjusted his notes with his 4 delicate arms. He was Mechari, tall and thin, with compound eyes that reflected the holographic displays around him. His voice clicked and hummed as the translator in Yuna's ear turned it into words she could understand. "Day," the professor said. "We continue our study of planetary habitability and the limits of biological life. Specifically, we will examine the role of gravity in species development." A holographic chart appeared in the air above him. It showed a simple line graph. On one side was gravity measured in g-force. On the other was something labeled species viability percentage. Yuna leaned forward slightly. This was actually interesting to her. "As you can see," Professor Tilvan continued, "the optimal range for sentient species development falls between 0.15 g and 0.35 g. This is where we find the vast majority of Union species. The Mechari homeworld sits at 0.28 g. The Silthian ocean world averages 0.22 g. The Velthan mining colonies prefer 0.31 g. He tapped the chart, and it zoomed in on the higher numbers, beyond 0. For G, we see a dramatic decline in complex life. The increased gravitational pressure places enormous stress on biological systems. Cardiovascular function becomes difficult. Skeletal structures must become dense and heavy. Movement requires exponentially more energy. Yuna frowned. She pulled out her small tablet and quietly looked up Earth's gravity rating. 1 g, that was the baseline measurement, wasn't it? 1 g meant Earth standard gravity. At 0.6 g, the professor said, his voice growing more serious, complex multicellular life becomes essentially impossible. The energy requirements alone would prevent any species from developing beyond simple organisms. The chart showed a red zone starting at 0.6 g. It was labeled non-viable, and at 1 g. Professor Tilvan made a sound that the translator interpreted as a dry laugh. At 1 full g of gravitational force, even microbial life struggles to survive. No sentient species could possibly evolve under such crushing conditions. The bones would shatter, the heart would fail, the very cells of the body would be compressed beyond function. He turned to face the audience, his compound eyes sweeping across the rows of students. This is why the Union's habitable zone classifications are so strict. This is why we do not colonize high-gravity worlds. Simply put, ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereof, no species survives 1 g gravity. It is a fundamental law of biology. Yuna stared at her tablet. Then she looked up at the professor. Then she looked back at her tablet. 1 g Earth was 1 g she had lived on. Earth for 23 years before coming here. She had run and jumped and swam and climbed. She had fallen downstairs and gotten back up. She had played sports and danced and done all the normal things humans did at 1 g. Her hand went up before she could stop it. 3,000 alien heads turned to look at her. Professor Tilvan's antennae twitched in her direction. Yes, the human student, correct? You have a question? Yuna's mouth felt dry. I'm sorry, Professor. I think I might be confused about something. Please, go ahead. Confusion is the first step toward learning. He said no species can survive 1 g gravity. That is correct. Then how am I not crushed? The auditorium went silent. Not quiet, silent. Yuna could hear the soft hum of the station's life support systems. She could hear her own heartbeat, which suddenly seemed very loud. Professor Tilvan's compound eyes cycled through several colors. His mandibles clicked once, twice, then stopped. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Could you repeat that?" "Earth," Yuna said. She held up her tablet, her hand trembling slightly. "My planet. It's 1G. That's actually the definition of 1G. Earth's standard gravity. I've lived there my whole life. I'm living now. I'm not crushed." She pressed a button, and her tablet projected Earth's planetary data into the air above her seat. Blue and green and white, her home planet rotated slowly in holographic form. Next to it, numbers scrolled by mass. Diameter, atmospheric composition, gravity, 1, 0G, A. McCory, student in the row ahead of Yuna, made a high-pitched sound and fell out of his seat. He scrambled backward on all 6 limbs, putting distance between himself and her. "That cannot be correct," Professor Tilvan said. His voice had changed. It was higher now, faster. "There must be an error in your data." "There's no error." Yuna was starting to feel scared. Why was everyone looking at her like that? "This is basic information. Anyone can look it up. Earth is a 1G world. All humans come from Earth. There are 14 billion of us." A Silthian student near the middle of the auditorium began to glow brighter. Yuna had learned was a sign of extreme distress. Another student simply stood up and ran for the exit. Then another. Then dozens. Within 60 seconds, half the auditorium was empty. Students were pushing and shoving to get through the doors, clicking and humming and making sounds of pure terror. Yuna sat frozen in her seat, watching the chaos unfold around her. Professor Tilvan had not moved. He stood at the front of the hall, his eyes fixed on the holographic image of Earth still floating above Yuna's head. His whole body was trembling. "Professor," Yuna called out. "I don't understand. What's happening?" "What did I say?" The professor didn't answer her. Instead, he turned to his teaching assistant, a young Makari who was pressed against the wall, looking at Yuna like she was a monster. "Get me the High Council," Professor Tilvan said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Tell them we need an emergency session. Tell them." He paused. His eyes moved back to Yuna, who was still sitting alone in her row, surrounded by empty seats and scattered belongings left behind by fleeing students. "Tell them we may have made first contact with a Death World species. And tell them she's been living among us for 3 months." Yuna didn't know what a Death World was. She didn't understand why everyone was so afraid. She was just a graduate student, a researcher, an ordinary person who had been chosen for an exchange program, but as she sat there in the empty auditorium, watching the professor stare at her with something that looked like fear, she was beginning to realize that maybe, in this galaxy full of strange and wonderful beings, she was the strangest thing of all. She pulled out her communicator and sent a message to her friend Kong Do-Yan back on Earth. "Hey, something weird happened today. I think I might have accidentally terrified everyone on the station. Call me when you can. I need advice." Then she looked up at the hologram of Earth, still rotating slowly in the empty hall, and wondered what else about her home was impossible. The room was white and cold and too bright. Yuna sat on a medical table that was clearly not designed for someone of her weight. It had groaned when she sat down, and she could see the metal bending slightly beneath her. She tried to sit very still. Around her, 7 alien scientists moved in careful circles, keeping their distance. They held scanning devices that hummed and clicked. They whispered to each other in languages her translator couldn't catch. They looked at her the way a person might look at a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. It had been 2 days since the lecture hall incident. In that time, Yuna had been moved to a secure medical facility, asked approximately 1,000 questions, and examined by more doctors than she could count. She had not been allowed to leave. She had not been allowed to contact Earth, except for one short message to her sister Hannah. "Not to worry," she had written. "Something complicated is happening, but I'm okay. I'll explain when I can. Love you." She didn't know if that message had been sent. Now, a door opened, and 3 figures entered the room. Yuna recognized them from her studies. They were members of the Scientific High Council, the governing body that oversaw all research and first contact protocols in the Galactic Union. The first was Counselor Varon. Her body was translucent and blue, flowing like water held in the shape of a person. The second was Dr. Mirok, the Union's chief xenophysiologist. A tall being covered in soft gray fur with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. The third was Professor Tilvan, who had not looked directly at Una since the day she ruined his lecture. "Miss Park," Counselor Viharan said. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a soft breeze. "Thank you for your patience." "Did I have a choice?" Una asked. She hadn't meant to sound bitter, but she was tired and scared and very far from home. Viharan paused. "No, I suppose you did not. For that, I apologize. But you must understand, your existence raises questions that we do not know how to answer." "I'm just a person," Una said. Dr. Mirok made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are not just anything, Miss Park. You are, according to everything we believed we knew about biology, impossible." He held up a tablet showing scan results. Una couldn't read the alien text, but she could see the charts and graphs, all of them showing measurements that were apparently off the normal scale. "Your bone density," Dr. Mirok said, "is approximately 8 times that of an average Union species. Your bones are not hollow. They are solid, filled with a dense mineral structure that we would normally expect to find in industrial construction materials. Not living tissue." He tapped the screen, bringing up another image. "Your muscle fiber is similarly remarkable. Each strand is compressed in a way that maximizes force output while minimizing size. A single human muscle cell can generate more force than the entire limb of a mechari." Professor Tilvan made a clicking sound of distress. Dr. Mirok continued. "Your cardiovascular system operates under pressure that would instantly kill most known species. Your heart is a pump of extraordinary power. Your blood vessels are reinforced to contain that pressure. You are, in essence, a high-pressure system, walking around in a low-pressure environment." Una didn't know what to say. She had always thought of herself as average. Maybe a little out of shape, actually. She hadn't exercised regularly since leaving Earth. "We would like to conduct some simple tests," Counselor Varon said. "Physical demonstrations to confirm our readings. Would you be willing?" "What kind of tests?" "Nothing harmful. Just normal activities for you," Una shrugged. "Sure." The scientists led her to a larger room with various objects arranged on tables and pedestals. More observers watched from behind a thick glass wall. Una felt like an animal in a zoo. "Please," Dr. Mirok said, "if you would simply jump in place." Una jumped. It was a small jump, nothing impressive. She landed normally. When she looked down, there was a crack in the floor. The reinforced floor, the observers behind the glass, made various sounds of alarm. Dr. Mirok's 4 eyes went very wide. "I'm sorry," Una said quickly. "I didn't mean to. Please don't apologize," Varon said, though her voice was shaking slightly. "Let us continue. Could you catch this?" She gestured, and an assistant carefully dropped a small data tablet from about a meter up. Una caught it without thinking. Every scientist in the room flinched. "You didn't crush it," one of them whispered. "Why would I crush it?" Una asked. "It's just a tablet. Your grip strength," Dr. Mirok said slowly, "is sufficient to crush solid metal. The fact that you can hold something delicate without destroying it shows a level of fine motor control that is extraordinary." Una looked at the tablet in her hands. She had never thought about it before. She just held things. She had always held things. Sometimes she dropped them because she was clumsy. But she had never crushed a tablet or a cup or a person's hand. Was that special? Was that something she was doing without knowing it? "What about physical activity?" Dr. Mirok asked. "You mentioned in your initial interview that you engaged in something called jogging." "Yes, running. For exercise. I used to do about 4 miles a day back home." 4 miles. Under 1G gravity? Daily. It's not that impressive, Una said. "Lots of people run much more than that. Marathon runners do 26 miles in one go." The silence that followed was so complete that Una could hear the hum of the lights above her. Dr. Mirok, turned to Counselor Veyron. 26 miles. Under 1G, without stopping. For fun, Yuna added helpfully. People do it for fun. There are races. Veyron's translucent body flickered in what Yuna had learned to recognize as intense emotion. Miss Park, I need to ask you a very important question. Please answer honestly. Okay, how many humans are there? Yuna pulled out her communicator and checked. About 14 billion now, I think. Population has been stable for a while. 14 billion beings like you. I mean, I'm pretty average. There are people much stronger than me. Athletes, soldiers, people who actually work out. Counselor Veyron turned to the other council members. They exchanged looks that Yuna couldn't read, but that seemed heavy with meaning. Miss Park, Veyron said finally, I want you to understand something. What you consider average is, by our standards, remarkable. What you consider normal is, to us, superhuman. Your planet, which you think of as home, is what we call a death world. A place so hostile that no life should exist there at all. But life does exist there, Yuna said. Yes, and that is what frightens us. The council retreated for a private discussion. Yuna was left alone in the testing room, surrounded by cracked tiles and nervous scientists. She thought about Earth, about the oceans and the mountains and the storms, about earthquakes and hurricanes and all the other disasters that humans considered just part of life, about the animals that could kill you, from tiny bacteria to massive predators, about the sun that gave you cancer if you stayed in it too long. She had always known Earth was dangerous. Every human knew that. But she had never thought of it as impossible. It was just home now, sitting in a room full of beings who couldn't survive a single day on her planet. She wondered what else she had taken for granted. Her communicator buzzed with a delayed message from her sister Hannah. Ani, I saw the news. Everyone's talking about it. Are you really an impossible being from a death planet? That's so cool. Please be safe. I love you. Yuna smiled for the first time in 2 days. At least some things never changed. 6 months had passed since Yuna asked her impossible question. In that time, everything had changed. Earth knew now. The whole planet knew that for all of galactic history, the universe had believed that humans shouldn't exist. News channels ran the story for weeks. Scientists gave interviews. Philosophers wrote essays. Children asked their parents why they were impossible. And parents didn't know how to answer. And now, finally, Earth was sending its first official delegation to meet the Galactic Union. Yuna stood in the docking bay of Station Velor 7, waiting with a crowd of alien dignitaries. She had been asked to be there as a familiar face, someone to help bridge the gap between two very different worlds. She didn't feel qualified, but she had agreed anyway. The human ship was called the Harmony. It was small, by galactic standards, barely a transport vessel. But as it settled into the docking clamps, Yuna could see the alien observers watching with the same tension. They might show toward an approaching warship. The airlock opened. A man stepped out. Ambassador Lee Taeho was 52 years old, with gray hair and a kind face. He had been chosen specifically because he was, as the selection committee put it, the least threatening human they could find. He had been a kindergarten teacher for 20 years before entering diplomacy. He smiled easily and laughed often and had a warmth about him that made people comfortable. He was also still a human, which meant he weighed approximately 3 times more than any Mechari present and could probably crush rock with his bare hands if he tried. He moved carefully. Yuna could see it in every step. He had been trained for this, told exactly how to walk and stand and gesture so that he wouldn't accidentally terrify everyone around him. His movements were slow and deliberate, like a large man trying not to scare a small animal. Greetings, he said, his voice gentle. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I am honored to be here. Thank you for welcoming us. Counselor Veyron glided forward to meet him. Ambassador Taeho, we are pleased to receive you. I am Counselor Veyron of the Silthian people. She extended a limb in greeting. It was a diplomatic gesture that had been practiced and agreed upon in advance. Taeho reached out and took it in what he thought was the gentlest possible grip. Veyron's entire body flickered. Her limb bent in ways it wasn't supposed to bend. She made no sound, but her form rippled with obvious distress. Taiho let go immediately. I'm so sorry. Did I hurt you? No, Veyron said, though her voice was strained. I am merely surprised by the strength of your greeting. We were warned, but experiencing it directly is something else entirely. Behind Taiho, more humans emerged from the ship. Captain Bei Sujin, head of the security team, was a tall woman with sharp eyes and an athletic build. She had been a soldier for 15 years and had seen combat in 3 of Earth's remaining conflict zones. Next to the alien security officers, who were watching her with obvious fear, she looked like a predator among prey. They keep staring at me, Sujin muttered to Yuna as she passed. They're scared, Yuna said. Of what? I'm not armed. They don't know that matters. They classified human skin as natural armor. Their standard weapons wouldn't hurt you anyway. Sujin blinked. Seriously? Seriously? The youngest member of the delegation was Yujiho, a journalist in his mid-20s. He had volunteered for this assignment because he wanted to document first contact for Earth media. He was enthusiastic and curious and completely unaware of how the aliens saw him. This is amazing, he said too loudly. Several Mechri nearby flinched at the volume. Look at this architecture. Look at these species. I've never seen anything like it. He picked up a decorative object from a nearby pedestal to examine it more closely. It was a ceremonial gift, an ancient artifact made of crystal and precious metals. It shattered in his hands. Jiho stared at the broken pieces on the floor. I barely touched it. Human normal, Yuna said quietly, is not normal here. The welcoming ceremony continued, though with more caution than anyone had planned. Ambassador Taiho gave a short speech about peace and cooperation. The alien delegates gave their own speeches about historic moments and new beginnings. Everyone was very careful not to touch each other. Later, there was a cultural exchange. The humans had brought gifts from Earth: music, art, food, stories. They set up displays in a large hall and invited the aliens to experience human culture firsthand. It did not go well. A Mechri diplomat tried human coffee and immediately went into what looked like a mild seizure. Apparently, caffeine was a powerful stimulant by galactic standards, not a casual morning drink. A cooking demonstration had to be stopped when humans began adding something called hot pepper to their food. The Sylphians present were convinced it was a chemical weapon. They weren't entirely wrong. Someone showed an action movie. The aliens watched in horror as humans on screen jumped from buildings, fought with their bare hands, and survived explosions. When they asked if this was war footage, Jiho laughed and said it was entertainment. You watch simulated violence for fun? Avelthan asked. It's not real, Jiho explained. Those are actors. It's just a story, but the violence is so detailed, so realistic. Sure. Good special effects. The Velthan walked away and did not come back. Despite the cultural chaos, Yuna noticed something else happening. Ambassador Taiho was moving through the crowd, talking to everyone he could. He crouched down to speak to smaller species so they wouldn't have to look up at him. He spoke softly and smiled often. When a young Mechri child wandered away from their parent, Taiho gently guided them back, moving so slowly and carefully that he almost looked like he was moving underwater. The child's parent watched with wide eyes, clearly expecting the worst. But the worst never came. The human giant simply returned their child and bowed politely before moving on. He's good at this, Captain Sujin said. Coming to stand beside Yuna? He was a kindergarten teacher, Yuna said. This makes sense. Who better to teach giants how to be gentle? As the event wound down, Yuna found herself standing with Ambassador Taiho by a large window overlooking the stars. It's beautiful, Taiho said. I never thought I'd see anything like this. Are you scared? Yuna asked. Terrified, he admitted. But not of them. I'm scared of us. Of what we might do without meaning to. Of all the ways we could hurt them just by being what we are. I've been here for 9 months, Yuna said. I've broken 6 chairs, 2 doors, and 1 very expensive scientific instrument. I cracked a floor by jumping. I scared a professor so badly that he ran away from his own lecture hall. Taiho laughed softly. And yet you're still here? I'm still here. Then so are we. A message came through on the ambassador's communicator. His face grew serious as he read it. What is it? Yuna asked. Colony World, Taiho said. Aurum 6, something is attacking them. Their military can't stop it. The council is asking. Paused. They're asking if humans will help. Yuna looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. People who looked nothing like her, who came from worlds she couldn't survive on, who'd spent the last 6 months being terrified of what she was. They were asking for help anyway. What will you tell them? She asked. Ambassador Taiho put away his communicator and straightened his jacket. For just a moment, he didn't look like a gentle kindergarten teacher anymore. He looked like something older, something harder, something forged by a world that didn't believe in mercy. I'll tell them yes, he said. That's what humans do. The planet Aurum 6 was dying from orbit. Sergeant Ominho could see the fires burning across the colony's main settlement. Emergency lights flashed in patterns that meant distress, evacuation, help us. The distress signal had been broadcasting for 72 hours now. It's growing weaker as the power systems failed one by one. Something down there was killing people. And the Galactic Union, with all its technology and all its ships, couldn't stop it. All right, Captain Bay, Sujin said, addressing the 47 volunteers gathered in the dropship's hold. Here's what we know. The colony had a population of 40,000. Mining operation, mostly Velthan workers. 3 days ago, they broke through into a deep cave system and released something called the Keth. She pulled up a holographic image. The creature was massive. 400 kilograms of muscle and claws and teeth. It looked like someone had combined a bear with a spider and then made it angry. Silicon-based predator, Sujin continued. Non-sentient. Very fast. Very strong. The Union military sent 3 response teams. All 3 were destroyed within hours. How many casualties? Minho asked. 6,000 confirmed dead. Probably more by now. Private Quan Nari, the youngest member of the team at 23, raised her hand. Why couldn't the Union soldiers stop them? Sujin's face was hard. Because Union soldiers evolved on 0, 3G worlds. Their bones are hollow. Their muscles are weak. A single Keth can kill a dozen of them before anyone lands a hit. Their weapons can hurt the creatures, but not fast enough to matter in us. Someone asked, We're from Earth. We've been fighting things like this for 1,000,000 years. These Keth are big and mean, but they're not that different from bears or big cats. We know how to handle predators. The dropship shuddered as it entered atmosphere. Through the small windows, Minho could see the smoke rising from below. Rules of engagement, Sujin said. Primary objective is evacuation of survivors. Secondary objective is elimination of the Keth threat. We move in teams of 4. We protect the civilians. We do not take unnecessary risks. She paused and looked at each of them in turn. The Union is watching. Every alien in the galaxy is watching. They think we're monsters from an impossible world. Today, we show them what kind of monsters we are. We save people. Understood? Yes, Captain. The ship landed in a clear zone near the colony's central bunker. Minho was first out the door, rifle up, scanning for movement. The air smelled like smoke and something else, something organic and wrong. Contact, someone called out. East side. 50 meters. Minho turned. A Keth was emerging from the ruins of a collapsed building. It was bigger than the hologram had shown, taller than any of them. With 4 legs and 2 arms ending in claws that looked like curved knives. Its eyes were small and black and full of hunger. It saw the humans. It charged. In the time it took to blink, 3 rifles fired. The Keth stumbled, roared, and kept coming. More shots. It stumbled again. Closer now. Close enough that Minho could see the foam around its mouth. Then Private Nari stepped forward and fired a single shot directly into its open mouth. The Keth dropped. It slid to a stop less than 2 meters from where they stood. They're tough, Sujin said, walking over to examine the body. But not that tough. Nothing special. Just big. That's what killed 6,000 people? Nari asked. She sounded shaken. That's what killed 6,000 people who weren't us, Minho said quietly. Different universe. Different rules. They moved toward the bunker. Along the way, they found more Keth, some alone, some in pairs. Each encounter followed the same pattern. The creatures attacked, the humans shot them, the creatures died. It was dangerous work, but it was work the humans knew how to do. Earth had been preparing them for this, their entire evolutionary history. The bunker doors were sealed. Minho could hear movement on the other side, voices speaking in languages he didn't understand. "This is Sergeant O. Minho of the Earth Response Team," he called out. "We're here to help. Can you open the doors?" A long pause. Then a voice translated through his earpiece. "How do we know you won't kill us? If we wanted to kill you, the doors wouldn't stop us." Another pause. Then slowly, the doors began to open. Inside, 5,000 survivors huddled in the dark. They were Velthan, mostly, with their gray skin and large eyes and thin limbs that looked like they would snap in a strong wind. They stared at the humans with expressions that Minho couldn't read. Fear, probably. Maybe hope. An older Velthan stepped forward. His translator identified him as Overseer Delic, the colony's administrator. He said. "We sent the distress signal, but we didn't think anyone could actually help." "We're here," Sujin said. "Is this everyone?" "Everyone who made it to the bunker. There are other shelters across the colony. Other survivors. We've been in contact with some of them, and we get them out too." What followed was the longest 14 hours of Minho's life. The team spread out across the colony, moving from shelter to shelter, clearing Keth along the way. They found survivors in basements, in sealed rooms, and one group hiding in a refrigeration unit that had run out of power 6 hours earlier. They found bodies too, more than anyone wanted to count. Minho took a hit in the 3rd hour. A Keth had gotten close enough to slash him across the chest before he put it down. His armor stopped most of it, but the claws had gotten through in one spot. Blood soaked through his uniform. "Medic!" Someone shouted. "I'm the medic," Minho said through gritted teeth. He looked down at the wound. It was deep but not fatal. Nothing vital hit. He pulled out his field kit and started treating himself. A Velthan child was watching him from behind a piece of debris. She had been hiding there when they cleared this section. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Yes. Why don't you stop?" Minho finished wrapping the wound and stood up. The world swayed for a moment, then steadied. "Because there are more of you to save," he said. "Pain doesn't matter. You matter." The child stared at him like he had spoken in a language she didn't know. By hour 14, it was over. The last Keth had been killed. The last survivors had been evacuated. The human team gathered at the central bunker, exhausted and bloody, but alive. 3 injured. 0 dead. Overseer Delic approached them. His large eyes were wet with what might have been tears. "I don't understand," he said. "We were told you were monsters. Deathworld creatures. Things that should not exist," Sujin said. She was cleaning her rifle, her movements slow with fatigue. "God, you saved us." "Monsters can be useful," Minho said. He was sitting against a wall, letting the colony's medical AI scan his wound. "Depends on who they're fighting for." Delic was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his robe and pulled out a small pendant, a symbol of his people's faith. "I want you to have this," he said, holding it out to Minho. "It is meant to protect the wearer from harm. I know you don't need protection, but I want you to know that you have our gratitude, our prayers. Whatever you need from us, forever." Minho took the pendant. It was light in his hands, almost weightless, fragile, beautiful. "Thank you," he said later. As the evacuation ships lifted off and the survivors looked back at their ruined home, Overseer Delic sent his report to the Galactic Council. "They are not monsters," he wrote. "They are not weapons. They are protectors. The humans came from a world that should have killed them, and instead of becoming cruel, they became kind. They are strong enough to destroy us and gentle enough to save us." He paused, then added one final line. "We should have welcomed them. We should have never been afraid." 1 year had passed since the Aurum 6 rescue. and Park Yuna could barely recognize the galaxy anymore. She stood at the entrance to the Grand Xenobiology Auditorium, the same place where everything had begun, the same hall where she had raised her hand and asked an impossible question, the same room that had emptied in terror at the sight of her planetary data. Today, the hall was full again, but this time, no one was running. The audience was mixed now. Mechari and Silthians and Velthans sat in their usual seats, but scattered among them were new faces. Human faces. The first generation of human students at the Galactic Union Academy, part of an exchange program that had seemed impossible just 18 months ago. Yuna walked to the podium at the front of the room. Her footsteps were heavy on the reinforced floor, newly installed to handle human weight. Signs around the hall showed warnings in multiple languages. Caution. Human accessible area. Structural reinforcement active. Small changes. Important changes. Proof that the universe was learning to make room. "Hello," she said. "My name is Park Yuna. 1 year ago, I sat where you're sitting now. I was confused and scared and very far from home. And then I asked a question that apparently changed everything." Light laughter rippled through the audience. Everyone knew the story by now. The professor who declared 1G impossible. The human student who proved him wrong. It had become famous across Union space, repeated in news broadcasts and academic papers and children's stories. "I'm not here to tell you that humans are special," Yuna continued. "We're not. We're just different. We come from a world that most species in this galaxy would consider a death trap. And somehow, we survived. We thrived. We became people who run for fun and eat poison for flavor, and keep animals that could kill us as pets." She smiled. "We're a little strange. But strange isn't bad. Different isn't dangerous. We're just from somewhere else." In the front row, Professor Tilvan sat with his compound eyes fixed on her. His antennae were relaxed now, no longer rigid with fear. After the events of the past year, he had become one of humanity's strongest advocates in academic circles. He had rewritten his entire thesis, published new papers, and personally apologized to Yuna 3 times, even though she kept telling him it wasn't necessary. "The galaxy is changing," Yuna said. "We have the Human Integration Accords now. We have mixed colonies and joint research programs and trade agreements that span species. We have human children growing up alongside alien children, learning together, playing together, becoming friends." She thought of him, Sajin, the 10-year-old son of one of the colony administrators. He had been born on Earth, but was growing up on Station Villar 7. His best friend was a young Mechari named Tillik. They played games together every day. Even though Siajin had to be careful not to run too fast or throw too hard or accidentally break anything, he didn't mind. He just knew that was how things were. "I used to think I was ordinary," Yuna said. "Back on Earth, I was just a graduate student. Average grades, average abilities, nothing special. Then I came here, and I found out that average for a human is extraordinary by galactic standards. That the things I took for granted, the simple facts of my existence, were impossible to everyone else." She paused, looking out at the mixed audience, at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds. "But here's what I've learned since then. Being extraordinary doesn't make you better than anyone else. It makes you responsible. When you're strong, you have a duty to be gentle. When you're powerful, you have a duty to be kind. When you're impossible, you have a duty to make the possible better for everyone." After the speech, there was a reception in the hall next door. Yuna moved through the crowd, talking to students and faculty, answering questions, shaking hands very carefully. She had gotten better at it over the past year. She knew exactly how much pressure a Silthian limb could take, exactly how to position herself so that smaller species didn't feel threatened by her height. She found her friend Kong Do-yeon standing near the refreshment table, looking overwhelmed. He had relocated to Station Violi 7 6 months ago to work on a universal translator project. And he still wasn't used to alien social events. "How do you do this?" he asked her. "How do you talk to so many people without getting tired?" "Practice," Yuna said. "And coffee. Lots of coffee. Aliens won't let me have coffee. They say it's too dangerous." "It's not dangerous for us. I know. They know they still won't let me have it. Yuna laughed. Some things were still complicated. Ambassador Taiho found her later, near the end of the event. He looked older than he had a year ago, more tired, but also somehow more peaceful. Good speech, he said.
Thanks.
I was nervous you didn't show it, he smiled. You've come a long way from the scared student I met at the docking bay. We all have. They stood together by a large window, watching the stars. This was their favorite spot on the station. The place where they could see ships from dozens of worlds coming and going. Proof that the galaxy was connected in ways it hadn't been before. Counselor Vaharan told me something yesterday, Taiho said. She said that when they first learned about humans, the council seriously considered quarantine, isolation. Some of them even talked about stronger measures. Yuna nodded. She had heard the rumors. But then they watched us, Taiho continued. They watched how we moved, how we spoke, how we treated each other and them. They saw the way we caught falling children and opened doors for elderly beings and apologized when we accidentally broke things. They saw soldiers who could kill with their bare hands choose to build shelters instead. They saw a species that had every reason to be cruel, choose to be kind, and Varen said that's when she knew we would be okay. Not because we were strong, because we were careful with that strength. Because we chose to be gentle when we didn't have to be. Yuna thought about Earth, about all the wars and conflicts and terrible things humans had done to each other over the centuries. They weren't perfect. They never would be. But they were trying. And maybe, in a universe full of impossible things, that was enough. Her communicator buzzed. A message from her sister Hannah Eni. Are you ever coming home?